Hi, I'm Alia Ishak. This is the Green Beehive, where we host business leaders and experts from different industries to discuss the transition towards sustainability, providing you with insights and solutions from all sectors of business. So, over to Ed.
Thanks, Alia, and welcome everybody to the Green Beehive. On this show, we have Emma Beeson and Sophie Howes from Tomato Sauce, the company that they founded.
My name's Emma, one half of the founding team behind Tomato Sauce.
Hi there, I'm Sophie Howes, the other half of Tomato Sauce.
Emma, you first. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you guys do.
We set up Tomato Sauce about 15 years ago, starting life as what you would term a promotional products supplier, so providing branded product for promotional marketing purposes alongside some exclusive products specifically for retailers. But in simplistic terms, we design and make stuff, so physical product stuff.
Okay, so is it branded merchandise? Have I got that right?
Yeah, so branded merchandise, and that can be at any level. So kind of £1 arena, I suppose, in value, way up to more corporate gifting and high-end, high-value gifts at the £100, £200, £300 level.
And whilst what you guys do is quite niche, the challenges you face from a sustainability perspective are probably reflective of the manufacturing sector as a whole. Is that fair?
Yeah, in parts, we do represent and have to navigate all of the regulatory and directive-driven manufacturing processes similar to different industries.
Without wanting to sound ridiculous or callous, can you explain why we should all care about ethical manufacturing? What's the business case?
So why should we care about ethical manufacturing? I guess there was a time when product quality, price and value were the three main factors that drove brand and consumer buying decisions. Today, things are very, very different. Awareness of the looming environmental crisis combined with media focus on unfair trade practices and the exploitation of workers has led to the rise of the more conscious consumer. When people choose between brands now, that they look beyond the obvious features such as quality and price. They're starting to ask much more probing questions about the ways in which the company and products impact the world in which we live. Consumers are demanding greater transparency from brands and gravitating towards those with a purpose. So those that are not selfishly focused on profits alone, but also strive to make a positive contribution to the lives of others and the well-being of our planet. Slapping a logo on a product without any regard to sustainability or ethical issues just isn't acceptable anymore. I think going forward, brands and their partners are going to have to think very, very carefully about how their efforts will be perceived by this new breed of conscious consumer.
When it comes to manufacturing, what are the various areas of sustainability that need to be considered?
In conversations, we always emphasise the fact that this can't be a binary approach. There isn't one list that everyone can follow to become more sustainable. And every brand and organisation will have different priorities. And it's important to remember that actually becoming more sustainable in some of your activities or operations is really about starting on a path to progression. I think perfection is an unrealistic overnight expectation. There are a number of ways in which an end product can become more sustainable. So we will work with our clients to approach the building of a more sustainable product in 6 key ways. We would initially consider raw materials and resources. So we would look to substitute raw material. So that could be making a move to recycled plastic, considering bioplastics, or looking at natural materials. The objective here would be to reduce the reliance on petrochemical-based virgin plastic. It's very difficult to make the perfect choice, but you have to make an informed choice. We would look for certified sustainable raw materials and resources, and the certified element is key here. We would consider the processing side of things, so the raw material processing and preparation, for example, the spinning of yarn from cotton, the source of the water used, the waste management that goes around that, and then when it comes to the actual manufacturing, the who, how, and where it's made. So outside of the actual what we are producing, we need to look at the people who are manufacturing it. Fair wage, modern slavery, energy consumption, conservation, the use of renewables, recycling, waste pollution. And this, I suppose, is an example of one area where the ethics of manufacturing cross over with the sustainability manufacturing process. You can buy a product that's made from a perceived sustainable raw material, but if it's then not made by the people who are also treated fairly, can you really call it sustainable in its widest sense? We would also look at distribution, and this is a relatively simple area of improvement or progression, if you like. We would consider the impact of air, sea, truck miles versus local production. And local production, I think, is becoming more and more of an important factor, certainly for consumers. Longevity of product is another key area that we would work through with our clients. It's like the old saying, buy cheap, buy twice. And then finally, the last prong we would look at is what we call end of life. So inevitably there is an end of life to a product, be that in 1 year, 5 year or 10 years time. We certainly as an organisation are making it more of our mission to focus on design for end of life. So focusing on the need to ensure that we minimise the mix of materials used in the production of the product. Mono-material design, I think, is critical to the success of the end of a product's life.
Thanks, Emma. Sophie, over to you for a moment. Why is ethical manufacturing important to you?
It would be absolutely devastating to produce something for a large brand like Disney, for example, knowing that the workers that have produced it have not been paid a fair wage, or knowing that someone's sewn together a promotional bag with a baby sat on their lap. It's just not human. And that's why we've always felt very, very strongly about all of these issues.
Are tomato sauce bound by regulatory requirements? I can't say that very well, I'm sorry. Or is it a kind of personal choice by you guys to embrace sustainability, or a bit of both?
So, yeah, you're quite right. It is a combination of both. There are laws or regulatory requirements that as a company we do have to abide by from a UK perspective. So, for example, if we manufacture products overseas and bring them into the UK and they contain batteries, we do have to report that to the Environment Agency. And that is designed to keep a track of companies importing those types of goods that could be poisonous to the environment and contribute to take-back schemes if they don't run one themselves. However, I think more importantly, it is a choice, a personal choice from a business perspective, and also a choice for our clients as well. So part of this is a bit of moral grounding in terms of we want to do right by the three pillars: people, planet, and our prosperity. And it's a balance of achieving improvements in those three pillars. But we also, as a service provider, have to consider aligning with our clients' CSR policies as well. So we predominantly do work with big global blue chip brands. We become their brand ambassadors, and we absolutely have to do the right thing for those brands as opposed to only the legal thing in whichever country of distribution we are placing the products.
With that in mind, and especially considering the fact that manufacturing works internationally and that there are different elements brought from all over the globe, are regulations the same the world over? And who provides that international framework of legislation if they are?
So unfortunately, there is really no current internationally harmonised legislation for sustainability in promotional merchandise or manufacturing. But many industries have forged their own associations to influence the purchase decisions within their own industry sectors. So if you take, for example, the textile industry, because high-end fast fashion is becoming a bit more of a dirty word these days, the likes of WRAP has become the base standard for ethical manufacture. And actually many retailers and manufacturers are now beginning to bear their logo on their tags or their marketing communications. So it's becoming more widespread in terms of consumer recognition, a little bit like how Fair Trade started as an initiative, but then is now quite recognised on products as a logo that consumers actually look for when they want to buy a societally better product. Equally, there are some globally recognised standards that are now basic requirements of what we would call sustainable claims. So, for example, if you want to claim that cotton is organic in either a t-shirt or an accessory like a drawstring bag, we would ensure that the claim is substantiated. And there are a number of different certification organisations that you can look to, but one is probably most widely recognised is GOTS, which is the Global Organic Textile Standard. So any manufacturer overseas or locally may claim that they're manufacturing organic cotton, but how do we know that that claim is true? If it is certified and accurately mapped, then you can actually substantiate that claim fairly easily nowadays. The same with recycled. So you'll see many products now, I used to be a water bottle and I'm a bag and I've been made out of 15 different water bottles, for example. So again, in those situations, when we are sourcing our manufacturers, we would make sure that they would have GRS certification, which is the global recycled standard, just to make sure that the claims can be substantiated. And again, this is about doing the right thing, but also upholding and underpinning our clients' brands. Another point to touch on is that leading brands and retailers are also now adopting, really importantly, the United Nations 17-point sustainable goals, which blends both environmental and social blueprints to achieve peace, prosperity for people and the planet, both now and in the future. So again, if you're looking for an easy paradigm and a blueprint with a number of different pillars to adopt and create CSR policies around that framework, that's a great one from an international perspective, obviously driven by the United Nations and the member states.
Thanks, Sophie. Now, you guys run a business. You're also ethically minded when it comes to sustainability. So, bottom line, is sustainability an obstacle to profit?
So for an organisation like ourselves, pricing our product, or rather the product our clients want to purchase, is a big challenge. And as a result, I guess profit, or more specifically, sustainable prosperity, does become a challenge. I think just by the very nature of our industry right now, today, no truly sustainable supplier is going to be able to directly compete with the bottom of the barrel price levels that the industry giants can. And I think for us at the moment, a real challenge is that luxury products become an indirect competitor for us. And by that, what I mean is part of ethical manufacturing would see you cover the costs of paying your workers fairly, running regular inspections to ensure that the factory is safe for workers and that the factory is adhering to environmental standards. And no one single part of the supply chain should be expected to absorb all of the costs associated with this. So in part, it's passed on. But the obstacle here is that you risk raising the price too much. And this is where you potentially end up competing directly with luxury products or brands. So pricing and therefore prosperity through the entire chain will need to hit that sweet spot between what's both affordable and ethical. For quite some time, we are going to have to focus on very heavily selling what we are doing and why we're doing it, almost as much as the product itself. So perhaps ethical manufacturing isn't in itself the obstacle, but I think it's the education around ethical manufacturing and why it's so critical that's going to be the challenge for us.
You guys are ethically minded within this industry where, as Emma's just described, it can be problematic or challenging to emphasize ethics. But are you guys outliers, or is the general trend for the whole of your industry to become more ethically minded and engaged with sustainability?
I think we've always been engaged in an ethical sense with manufacturing and just creating and abiding by some values that we've always held within our company, partly because of the kind of company that we keep and the clients that we service. We've always wanted to do what we've perceived as the right thing. There is a trend nowadays, though, within our industry sector because of the growing consumer pressure, partly social media. So, of course, there's a growing trend now, and we're really happy to embrace it. As Emma was referring to previously, unfortunately in our industry, certainly from the promotional merchandise perspective, there are many claims and what we call greenwashing. If you're a client and a company looking for a sustainable product, you just have to dig a little bit deeper and ask those questions, and that is challenging for us. But we're not doing any of this because it is a trend. We're doing it because we want to.
Emma, how does a potential client identify what you've described as greenwashing? How do we know that the merchandise we're buying comes from a company that are genuinely embracing issues of sustainability and aren't trying to hoodwink us with what you've described as greenwashing?
It comes back to some of the points Sophie mentioned earlier. Certification of the claim is really, really important. And if actually your manufacturer or your supplier cannot provide you with the documentation and is not transparent with the documentation that they are providing, I would ask more questions, I would dig deeper, or I would move on to another supplier. You know, we keep saying this, perfection is not an overnight, instantaneous position we can get ourselves in. We've just got to be mindful of it and do what we can at every single stage. It comes back to those kind of 6 key areas that we always walk our clients through. So we have always taken a very, I suppose, holistic approach to a product, and that is looking at every single element that goes into the product, the raw material, the packaging, the manufacturing, where, when, how, who, why, the whole gambit, I suppose.
That's us come to the end of the podcast. Huge thanks to Emma and Sophie from Tomato Source for their insights on ethical and sustainable manufacturing. Thank you so much for listening. Please join us next time on The Green Beehive.